machine learning, if you see that it can be divided into three categories. One is, you can see, supervised learning, another one is unsupervised learning, and reinforcement learning. Till now, we have done many models on classification and the regression problems, and those are under supervised learning. Unsupervised learning means these are basically the data driven, only the data set is available and the features are not labeled. So the target variable is actually not there, only the features are there, and from that you have to find out the clustering. Okay, so one of the method today that we are going to do, that is k-means clustering, and that is an unsupervised learning process. Another one is also there, that is a reinforcement learning. In the reinforcement learning models, what happens? It is basically the model actually learns from the environment. Okay, so when the model do something wrong, and accordingly the correction is continuously taking place. So from the environment it learns, and that is what is the reinforcement learning. So KNN that we are going to discuss today is one of the k-means clustering that we are going to do is one of the unsupervised learning method. So let us consider first that there are only two features, say F1 and F2, the two features, and your data set is such that these two features are only there. Okay, and from that you have to create the different categories, different clusters, and that is there depending upon the values of those of that data set. Now, if we plot this data set, this F1 and F2, we will get this kind of discrete points in a scatter diagram. Now, the first thing that we have to divide into few clusters. So the first question is that how many clusters are actually there? So that is again one unknown thing, that we do not know that how many different clusters are actually there in the data set. So only this scatter diagram that you can see here, that is there only. So in the k-means clustering, this k indicates the number of clusters. So if we take that only there are two clusters, that we can think in that way. If the k is equal to 2, then maybe these will be the two clusters. But we don't know that whether k will be 2 or 3. Or it can be 4 clusters, we do not know. So there may be many clusters, like if we consider k is equal to 4, maybe there are 4 clusters that will be generated. So the first thing is that we have to know what is the amount of, we have to decide that how many clusters actually best decide this particular, best represent this particular data set. So first try to understand the method, and then we'll see that how we select the k. So here you can see if we consider k is equal to 2, probably our clusters will be like this. The question is how can we find out these two clusters using k-means clustering method. So let us start with some assumption that k is equal to 2. So this is an assumption. Based on that, we are first doing it. So the technique is that initially what we do, we just think of any 2 points. Why 2 points? Because we have considered there are 2 clusters. So that is why we take 2 points. Say one is red, another one is green. What will be their position? Their position can be anywhere in this region. So arbitrarily, any 2 points we have selected, and those we are considering the initial position of the cluster centers. Then what we are going to do, we will find out the distance of the different points from those 2 initial points that we have decided. Let us consider this one is the red point, say R, and this one is the green point, say G. So what we are going to do, we'll find out which points are nearer to R with respect to G. So the Let us consider this particular point. Now, what we are going to do, we'll measure this distance. That means how much distance away this point from the R, and we'll measure this distance. How much distance it is away from G. So which one will be smaller? Then here it is clear from this diagram that this one is smaller distance. So this will be under red cluster. So this point will become under red cluster. If we see that, suppose this particular point, it is clear that this will be under green cluster because this distance is smaller with respect to this distance. So in this way, we'll consider each and every point and we'll identify that which points are nearer to red and which points are nearer to green. So which points will be nearer to R will be the initial cluster corresponding to these initial points, and which are closer to green will be the initial cluster corresponding to the green initial point. So if we do that, then it is clear that that will be, if you just simply join these 2 points and if you draw a bisector, then definitely which are at the left will be closer to red and which are at the right will be closer to green. So definitely it is clear for this initial idea that I have just given you. If you do accordingly, you will find that all these points will become red, and all other points will become green. I hope this part is clear. So this is the first iteration, you will get that. What will be the second stage? The first stage you have understood that how the initial cluster will be decided. After that, how you are going to modify. So then what you have to do, now those who are red, now you find out the centroid of these points, and now you replace this red point at this location. So what you have to do, the initial cluster that you have identified as red, now you find out the centroid of this initial cluster which are red, and at that center you place your new center. Similarly, you find out the centroid of this green, maybe that is this point, and you place this at that location. And again, redo the same thing what you have done earlier. That means you find out this green point is, or you consider all the points which are closer to this new point, that will form a particular cluster, and which are closer to this new point will form a new cluster under red. So definitely in that way, if you do, so that will be, if you just simply join these 2 new centroidal points and if you draw the bisector, this left side will give you that red and the right side will give you that green. So in this way, you will find the new centroidal point, and you see the new centroidal point, and then what you are going to do. So these all will become now red and this all will become now green. And again you have to do the same thing. Then all will become red, you calculate the new centroid. Here also you calculate the new centroid. Okay, and do the same thing until the cluster is not further changing. After when the it will be properly distributed, when the clusters will be properly identified, after that you will find that subsequent iterations the cluster points are not going to change. So you have to do this iteration up to that point. So in this way you can see that we can identify finally that what will be the final clusters. So this is what is the technique that is used in k-means clustering to identify the 2 different clusters only from the data set. That means, what is the meaning of this cluster? That means these are of a kind and green are of a different kind. Okay, you see that target class is not there, only feature 1 and feature 2 is there, but now from the data you have identified that which data is corresponding to someone and which data is corresponding to some 0. If we consider a binary class, in this case, we have as if divided. But initially, no data was given. So this is a kind of unsupervised learning that you have identified. Now you see that how to determine the value of k. That is very, very important. Okay. So for that, what you have to do, you can understand that we can consider different kinds of clusters. It can be 2, it can be 4, it can be even more than that, as you can see. So the technique is that in each case you have to find out the error, and then you have to plot that error, and from that you have to take the decision. So what is the meaning of that? Let us consider for this cluster what is the error. So suppose finally we have decided these are the 2 clusters of the dataset. So how the error is defined? The error is defined as from the centroidal position, if you take the distance from all the points in that cluster, and if you square them, sum them, then that is what is the sum of squares error 1, SSE, sum of square error 1. That means for the cluster 1. Similarly, you can find out sum of squares error 2. That means the second cluster. And finally, for this clustering, the total sum of square error is basically SS1 plus SS2, because here k is only 2. Then what you have to do? Then you have to take, if you consider k is equal to 4, for that again you will get the different centers, and in that case definitely SSE1, SSE2, SSE3, SSE4 will be there, and you have to find out the total SSE in that case. So in that way, for all the different options that is possible to different clusters possible, you have to calculate what are the values of those SSEs, and from that you have to plot a graph where in the y-axis it is representing the sum of square error if you consider the number of cluster 1, if you consider number of cluster 2, if you consider number of cluster 3, like this. And from that curve, you see that this curve looks like an elbow, right? Looks like the elbow. And that elbow point is basically considered as the number of clusters. So for here, you can see that if this is the curve, so we'll take k is equal to 4. Okay, so this is a standard assumption, because after 4, as you can see that the error is gradually decreasing, but the rate of decreasing is very, very small. Okay, so unnecessarily you can understand that if we consider more and more number of clusters, definitely the computational expense will be more, and that is why once the value of k will reach to such a point that after that the error is not decreasing much if you increase the number of clusters, so we will take this one. So this elbow point is generally taken, and this particular curve is called the elbow curve. So this elbow technique, by this elbow technique, we can find out what will be the right k for this data set. Okay. Now next, we are going to discuss about the k-fold cross validation. So previously we have seen the many techniques by which you can validate. For validation, you have seen we have used the train test split method, where a particular fraction of data we have used for the training, and the remaining data we have used for the testing, for the validation. Even in that case, there may be some situations that might not give very good results. So this is a better method than that, and that is the k-fold cross validation, where what is done, suppose there are total 100 samples, and in that 100 samples, initially we have divided into few folds. Here we are considering, say, 5 folds. Okay, so there are total 5 folds, say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Total 5 folds we are considering, and in each fold, you see that what we are going to do for the first case, what we are going to do, we are considering the first fold, and remember this first fold is containing, since there total 100 samples. So each fold actually containing 20 samples. So 20 samples is there in the first fold, 20 samples is there in the second fold, like that. Then what we are doing, that from the first fold, the whole 20 samples we are considering as the testing, and the remaining 80 samples, that means the remaining 4 folds, we are considering as a training data. So we train our model with this, and this is for our testing. Then what we are doing, we are considering, you see that the second fold as the testing, and other 4 folds as the training data, and from that we get some score. So for each case, from this test data we'll get some score. From here also, from this test data we are going to get some score. For the third one, exactly in a similar way, we'll consider this as this fold as the test, and the remaining 4 will be training, and in that way we'll consider all these 5 folds one by one, and in each case we are going to get some score. Okay, so finally what we can do is that we'll take the average score of all these scores that we are going to get as the score of the model. So that is a better representation of the model accuracy. Okay, so that is a better representation of the model score. So because in that case randomly we are considering these folds, and again we are choosing these one by one. So as if there is no chance that some data is there is no chance of overfitting the model, basically. Okay, so that is why this is the method what is done in case of a k-fold cross validation, that k is there, the number of folds that you are considering. You can consider 5-fold, you can consider 10-fold. So accordingly in the coding you have to mention what is the value of the CD. It can be 5 or 10, like that. Next we'll see another thing in the coding, that is pipeline. So pipeline is basically a way by which we can write a very compact coding. Sequential operations can be done within a pipeline one by one. It can done the pre-processing, it can do the model feed, everything can be done within the pipeline. So it is nothing new, but whatever you have done till now, the same thing, only in a compact way we are going to write it. Okay, so that we'll see when we'll do the coding with the pipeline. Now feature scaling is a very important concept, where basically you'll find that in the features, let us consider some of the data maybe in centimeter, some data may be in kg, some data may be in gram per millimeter cube. So actually the features can be of different kinds. They may be continuous data and of different units. So it is possible that some of the data like 1, 5, 7, 8 in that order, some data may be 200, 700, 900, 1200 in that order, and some data may be in the order of say 3 into 10 to the power 5, 2 into 10 to the power 5, like that. So you can understand these data are of different magnitude depending upon their units and their nature. So in those models where basically the Euclidean distance is considered, like just you have seen in case of k-means clustering, where the distance is very important when you are calculating the when you are finding out the position of the centroid and all that. In case of similarly k nearest neighbor, KNN algorithm, you will find that the distance is very important, because in that case when the distance is important, in case of support vector machine also you have seen the distances are important. In those models, this feature scaling is very important. Otherwise, if they are not of the similar order of magnitude, in that case you will find a huge error, and that is not going to give you the right answer. So for them it is very important to do the proper scaling. Even in the image data you have seen that it's varying from 1 to 255 or depending upon the image. So in that case also scaling is recommended in the warning probability you have seen. So some of the calculations, it is very important, but in case of like decision tree or random forest or ensemble techniques, you actually do not require this kind of thing, because they are based on the decision tree and all that. The distance thing is not going to come. But otherwise, you can understand that when you are calculating the distance from this distance from a particular mean point, you can understand this magnitude will vary a lot, and it is going to create the problem. So in case of feature scaling, there are different ways the feature scaling can be done. One of the very commonly used method is the standard scaler. Standard scaler, what it is doing is that it's convert the data points. This kind of a transformation is done. X is the data point values. If the values are x1, x2, like that, then x is that data point value minus the mean of all these x, divided by the standard deviation of these values, So if you do that, in that case, what will happen? Generally, this is done for if the feature is following a Gaussian distribution or normal distribution, and in that case, the mean is equal to 0. Mean of z, I mean to say, the mean of z will be equal to 0, and standard deviation of the z will become 1. So for all these cases now, what is going to happen? For all these cases, mean is going to, of the new standard normal variate will have the mean 0 and the standard deviation 1. So in that way, you can make the scaling. Another way of you can do the scaling, that is the mean max scalar. In the mean max scalar, it is the scalar is defined as x minus x minimum. So minimum of this value is considered, and that divided by x maximum minus x minimum. Okay, so this is what is done in case of a mean max scalar. So x minus x minimum by x max minus x minimum. So this is one of the technique that is done. And another one is the unit vector. Unit vector technique is generally done in case of image processing, where it is varying from 0 to say 255. So simply you divide by the maximum value to all the data. Okay, so in that case, all the data will become between 0 to 1. Okay, so this is what is the idea. In this way, we basically try to consider the features of the similar order. Okay, this is the basic idea, but different techniques are there by which this scaling can be done. Now this one, PCA, is again a very important concept, principal component analysis. It is used for the dimensionality of the dataset reduction. Dimensionality reduction is the main objective. What do you mean by the dimensionality? Dimensionality means basically the features. How many features actually affecting that particular target? Generally, these PCA techniques are helpful when there are many features. If many features are there, in that case, it is very difficult to visualize the whole thing, whole data, because you can understand only 2 features. If it is there, then you can easily visualize in a graph. If it is 3, maybe possible, but still difficult in a. But if it is 4, after that is not going to possible to visualize everything, right? Not only that, sometimes you will find that the effect of some of the features are very negligible with respect to the other, or the feature variation is not there much. So for those cases, it is important that some of the feature variations can be neglected with respect to the other features variation. Okay, so now if we just consider, let us take 2 features are there, and if we plot these 2 features like this, suppose the variation is like this. Suppose the discrete points are like this, and if you just simply fit a straight line to these points, the straight line will look like this. Now you see along this direction, along the direction I have just shown by this red line, in that direction, the variation of data is maximized. The maximum variation of the data is along this direction. So how this red line is actually drawn? This red line is drawn, red line is a line such that the maximum variation of the points is along that direction. Okay. And if you consider perpendicular to this line, the variation is small. The variation is small. Okay. So now if you just simply project all these points on this line, if you just simply project all these points in the line, and if you just rotate the picture, then this is the red line, and this is the line which is perpendicular to that. And the line, what you have done, if you just project the points, these green points, and you see the variation perpendicular direction is very small. The variation in this direction is maximum. So if this variation in this direction is very, very small with respect to this direction, sometimes what we can consider that only this direction is sufficient, and we are just going to consider these projected points on that line, and based on that we can do some analysis. So what you can understand, this is a kind of dimensionality reduction. That means initially it was two-dimensional, but from the, when the variation we have observed along this direction where it is the maximum variation, and in that direction we can see that if we capture the projected point only in that direction, that is representing the data quite a good way, because in the perpendicular direction where the variation is almost negligible with respect to that direction. Okay, so in that way we can reduce the dimension. Similarly, if suppose there are three features, so actually what is PCA1? So this is what is the PCA1. This is basically a PC1, principal component 1, and this perpendicular direction, that is what is the PC2. Okay, so in this way you are just trying to finding out the different principal components, and then after that the contribution of the different PC1, that means the variation of the data points in that direction, we plot the scree plot, and we see, so this is PC1, this is PC2, this is PC3. Maybe you will find that if there are more features are there, 7 or 8 or 100 features are there, maybe you will find that in the first 2 or 3 features, the first 2 features is actually covering say 93% or 94% of the variation of the data. Then there is no point to consider the other values. Only what we are going to do is simply the project all those points in these 2 axes, PC1 and PC2, and that is the representation of the whole data points over that PC1 and PC2. PC1, PC2, you will get the representation of the whole data. Okay, so this is what is the idea of dimensionality reduction, and that is done when the number of features are very high dimension problems. There it is very important to reduce the dimension of the data set. Next is hyperparameter tuning. Hyperparameter tuning, you already know that there are different hyperparameters there in the models. Depending upon the different models, there are different hyperparameters, and variation of those parameters actually affect the model performance. So depending upon the data set, which one will be the right choice or right set of hyperparameters, it is very important to identify. Then only your model will perform in a best way. So there are different techniques, like one of the technique is the grid search CV, another one is the randomized search CV. In grid search CV, what is done, it is all possible combinations of the hyperparameters that you specify in the parameters, it will consider that, and out of them, the best parameter is identified. In randomized search CV, what is done when the number of parameters are huge, it will take a huge time, you can understand, because all possible combinations it will try, run the model and check the test score, and then it will decide. So in that case, grid search CV will take a lot of time if the number of parameters are very high. So in that case, what we can do, we use the randomized search CV, where we mention that how many iterations we want, and accordingly, randomly it will select some of the combinations, and based on that it will predict the best hyperparameter. So now let's go to the coding part and see that how can we, first we'll see that how can we do the k-means clustering, and after that we'll see some of the applications like hyperparameter tuning and pipeline. Okay. So first, what you do in the k-means clustering notebook, create a notebook of k-means clustering, and then you give the name in the text box, and after that simply import some of the important libraries. Like k-means you have to import from the cluster, then mount your drive, after that you load the data from income.csv, and check whether you are getting this table or not. So next step is that you can see
Google Drive mount k dot clustering korte hobe. Okay.
So here you can see the name, age, and income that is there. So from this data set, you have to identify the cluster. Nothing else is there, only the name, age, and the income. So first we can see the data in the scatter plot, and for that you do this scatter plot first. And if you look this scatter plot, you can definitely identify that there are 3 clusters. So directly you can use the k-means clustering considering the number of clusters is equal to 3, because it is quite intuitive. It is very simple to select the number of clusters from this distribution of the data. But whenever you will find the difficulty in identifying that, you have to draw the elbow curve and you have to find out that how many clusters you have to select. That you have to remember. But here it's simple. I hope you are getting this scatter diagram. And then what is the technique that you have to use this k-means that you have already imported from the sklearn, and use this hyperparameter that n clusters is equal to 3, and then you can predict. You see that km dot fit predict of the data set. What is the data set that is considered, where only 2 columns are there, age and income. Okay, so name column is not considered, only age and income. So and you see that it has divided the data points into the clusters. Here number of data are actually small, so that is why you can see that the clustering has been done. And now if you just simply add one column where these cluster values will be there, so for that you just can add it. And so that you can see properly in the data frame that what are the persons belong to which clusters. So this is basically the Y predicted is actually added in a column in that data frame that already was there. You can also see that what are the cluster centers. So for that, this is the you can see the cluster center. And here you see that if we just plot the cluster centers, if you want to plot the cluster centers and the different clusters as different colors, so for that another visualizing code snippet is there. You can make a graph of the different clusters and you can see their cluster centers. Now you see that in this particular example, the age. Now if you are done with that, then this is very important. Please pay attention here. You see this in this particular column, age, the values of the age are in the order of 10, right? 27, 29, 28 in that order. Whereas in the income, you see the values are of very high magnitude, right? So for that, it is very important to do the proper scaling. And since we have not done proper scaling, as you can see, the clustering has not been properly done. If you observe carefully, the clustering has not done properly, right? So this is because of you have not done the scaling. So that is why scaling is very, very important. And one of the feature scaling that you have to use for the data, and after that if you use this method, then it will work fine. So what we have to do, we have to pre-processing using the min max scaler. Here min max scaler is used for the scaling, and for that you just use the min max scaler for scaling, and after scaling you see the values in the age and the income like this. And now again you can make a scatter plot of the data of this scale data. And after that, if you apply the k-means clustering, and you see now it is different from what you got earlier, and you can make the table as well with these predicted values, and you can also see the cluster centers if you want. and the visualization. Now you see that it is properly clustered because we have done the proper feature scaling using min max scaler. Okay, so you can also make the elbow plot and by calculating the SSE, and that you can also first you write the elbow plot in a text cell. Okay, in a text cell you write elbow plot, and then here, as you can see, basically for the value of k underscore RNG, this is a variable and that may vary from 1 to 10. Okay, so in that range it is going to vary. So for each of the value of k from 1 to 10, basically k-means clustering is being done, and the sum of square error is actually appended within that SSE. And then if you just simply plot the standard error with the number of values of k that has been considered, you see that you'll get this kind of a elbow curve. And it is also clear from the elbow curve that k is equal to 3 is the best choice. Okay, so next is another exercise where that you have to do. So I just put this exercise problem. That you must write in the text cell. This exercise problem you must write in the text cell. Okay, so this is the problem that you have to do of your own. Next we'll go to the hyperparameter tuning. So go to the hyperparameter tuning notebook. Hyperparameter tuning we'll see now with the iris dataset. So first in a text cell, you write that you want to do the hyperparameter tuning to select the best model with best hyperparameters using grid search CV and randomized search CV. So first thing what we are going to do, we will import the dataset from the iris dataset. That is the, and we have already worked with the iris dataset. We know these things, so initial steps need not to be explained. So simply paste it and execute. And you will see the data set, and if you see the target, there are 3 different categories. As you know, zero, 1, and 2. Those are tagged as 0, 1, and 2 in the target class. Okay. So what we're going to do, first thing is that we'll split the data. So in a text cell, write this information that we are going to split the data, and then So manually we have split the data. After that, we are going to use the support vector machine, then feed the model and we'll check the score with the test data. So this is the standard, you know it very well, and you check what is your score. In my case, it is 0.93. So this is the technique that we have already used. We know this particular technique. Now, after splitting the data, we just feed the data in the standard process and we check the score. And you see that when we feed the model, before that we have select the model such that its kernel is radial basis function RBF, and the C parameter is 30, and the gamma parameter we have given auto. So these are basically the hyperparameter. In our case, in this particular model, we have considered only these three hyperparameters. Okay, but we are not sure that whether this RBF is going to give the best result or C is equal to 30 is going to give the best result. So we have to tune these hyperparameters so that in the support vector machine, by after tuning maybe we get a better result. So what we are going to do next, one of the technique is the cross validation. What we have seen in a cross validation technique. Okay, so in a text cell you paste it, and then from the sklearn you import cross-val score. From sklearn you import cross-val score and execute, and after that you see what we are doing. So what this line actually doing, you see that cross validation considering kernel is equal to linear. So now the linear kernel has been taken, C is equal to 10 and gamma equal to auto. With these hyperparameters of what is X and Y, the whole iris data, and iris.target is considered as X and Y, and what is the meaning of CV is equal to 5? We have considered 5-fold cross validation. That means we have taken the 5-fold, the whole data is divided into 5 folds, and then what we'll get as a score, definitely we'll get 5 scores for each combination of train and remaining 4 folds as 1 fold as test and remaining 4 fold as training. So here are these 5 scores. Here you can see these 5 scores. Okay, so you can see that when you are changing the training set and testing set, the score is varying. Under few condition the score is 1, and under few condition it can be 0.9 or 0.96, like that. So score is varying depending upon how the training and testing data set is taken. And finally what you can do actually, here you can also make an average of this. Okay, so what you can do, just simply this is equal to, if you write what CV underscore the first case, let us consider CV underscore 1. If you just simply save it there, and you just find out NP dot average, NP dot average of CV underscore 1. So you can find out the average. I don't know NumPy I have already defined or not. Let us define it. So here you can see, if you just simply do this np dot average, then it will give the average of the 5
values for the 5 different data sets. So that might be a very good representation of the actual picture of that particular model. Okay, because it is taking 5 folds. You can also vary this one from, instead of 5, you can also take the 10 folds also to get a better result. Okay, so these are the different things that you can do. But what is the ultimate point is that it is not the only thing that we are interested in. So what we can do, you see, now what we are doing, instead of this, the second line you just write, now the kernel has been changed from linear to RBF. Value of the C is kept constant 10. The gamma is also the same auto. And if you just simply execute that, you can see a different set of values coming. Okay, so once you are changing the kernel, then it is giving a different value. So basically these are hyperparameters and we are changing that. The third one, we have considered another combination. And it is also giving a different result. So you can understand that manually we can change one by one, and we can see that how is the score. We can take the average and we can compare definitely that which one is giving a better result, which particular combination of hyperparameter is giving the best result for the SVM. Okay, so this is one thing that we can do with the cross validation. But again, manually we have to give one by one, we have to check. So here basically the grid search CV actually helpful. So once for all, you just specify the parameters and then you run the grid search CV. Definitely it will take time depending upon how many parameters you are actually putting. So what is done in a grid search CV, just observe. In a text cell, you just paste it. This is the heading. Grid search CV. Now here you see that initially what is done, that from the sklearn model selection you have to import grid search CV, and then you define the classifier as grid search CV svm.svc, that is the model. And after that you have to specify the different hyperparameters that you want to vary. Suppose you want to vary the hyperparameter C, so you give it in the form of a dictionary. As you can see, we have passed the different parameters in form of a dictionary, that C is equal to this, this list contain the different values of C that we want to check, 1, 10 and 20. And the kernel is another key, and these values are basically the list containing RBF and the linear. These two kernel we want to check, and these are the different values of C that we want to check. And cross validation, CV is equal to 5. Okay, 5-fold cross validation we want to do. And after that, if you return the after that, if you just simply fit it in the data, you see that this is the X and this is the Y of the actual data set. Okay, so this is what is the coding in that case to create the model using the grid search CV. And if you do that, then in this CLF model, it will be trained with this particular thing. And after that, if you want to see that what is there within the CLF, you can see the one of the parameters, say best estimator. You will find that what are the best estimators. You can find what are the best parameters. You can find what is the best score. Okay, so let's try these things. Like we want to know what are the best scores that is giving the best parameters corresponding to which we get the best score. So here from this training, from this grid search CV, it is giving that when C is equal to 1 and kernel is equal to RBF, the model is giving the maximum score. And we may also find out, we can also see that what is that corresponding score for that corresponding combination by CLF.base score. Okay, so you can see it's giving 98%. So grid search CV definitely is giving or after hyperparameter tuning, you can see that your score actually increased. Okay. And if you want to see, you can also create in the form of a data frame what are the different combination grid search CV actually worked. It actually worked over all the different combinations possible given to the as a hyperparameters. So that also you can create a data frame out of that to see, but it is not advisable because many times the hyperparameters are large. So in that case, maybe, or if you consider all the combination, it will be more than 400, 500 or more than that. So you need not to actually create, that is not actually required. What is required is what are the best parameters, because finally, when you are going to create that model, you have to use this combination of parameters. Okay. So this is the tuning, how it is done. Now we'll see the randomized search CV. So in a text cell, again give the title. And basic method is exactly same. Only thing I told you that it is not considering all the combinations of the hyperparameters, only randomly selected combinations is considered, and that also you have to specify. Here you can see we have specified here when we are defining this randomized search CV, we have specified it here is n underscore iteration is equal to 2. So n underscore iteration is equal to 2 means we want only the two combinations to check, and that has been done, and you can see these two combinations has been checked, and out of which you can exactly in a similar way you can find out the best parameters and best score under randomized search CV also, exactly in the same thing. Okay, so this is all about the randomized search CV and the grid search CV. Now you can also consider the different models also. Suppose the same problem we want to compare, that SVM is better or a random forest classifier is better or a logistic regression is better, and maybe for the different hyperparameters of each of them. Okay, so to select best model as well as the hyperparameter, then in the text cell you first paste this one, in the text cell you paste this one, and then here you see in this particular cell what is there. It is basically the model parameters has been defined within a dictionary. Here you see that SVM, and in SVM what defines basically the model is SVM, parameters C, 1, 10 and 20, and kernel RBF linear. For the random forest classifier you see it is the model name, then the parameters that is considered n estimators 1, 5 and 10. Okay, and in logistic regression you see that the logistic regression solver, liblinear, and the multi-class, which is auto, and parameter C 1, 5 and 10. So for different models, you know, different hyperparameters are there. So through list you can pass all those hyperparameters and initially create this model underscore params. And once that will be created, then you generate this code that is a list, initially the empty list, and gradually according to this loop it will be things will be append here. So you just copy the cell. So here you can see what has been done. The classifier has been defined, and you see that one for loop is given for all the model params dot items. So one by one all the model parameters will be taken within the for loop, and then grid search CV has been applied for all of them. And what is the data? Data is the iris data set X and Y, and then within the score, how the things are going to append, you see the scores dot append and the model name, and the base score and the base parameters. So that is going to append within the score. And finally, you can see for each of the model, what are the base score and the best combination of parameters. So that you are going to see. And then finally, you have to take the decision that which model with which hyperparameter combination you want to work with. So here you can see that SVM is giving the best for this combination. Okay, so this is about the hyperparameter tuning. Now we'll go to the next notebook. You go to the next notebook, that is the pipeline feature. Pipeline feature scaling and PCA, and that will be implemented. So everyone go to that notebook. In a text cell first, in a text cell, you write pipeline. And what is the objective? That also you write in the text cell only. Compare the models, logistic regression, decision tree, write in the text cell. Then you import all the required libraries. That is very important. And as you can see, we have imported the iris data, load iris, train test split, standard scalar, PCA. PCA is principal component analysis, pipeline, logistic regression, decision tree, and random forest classifier. So step by step we are going to do. First you execute this one. Then the next step is you load the iris dataset and split using train test split. Then the next step is that we'll create the pipeline. Okay, the next step is we are going to create the pipeline. So observe carefully, how can we create the pipeline? So you have understood what we want to do. We basically want to solve the problem using 3 different models. And one is by logistic regression, another one decision tree classifier, and random forest classifier. So first what we are going to do within the pipeline, what we are passing, you see that 3 pipelines are created. One is pipeline underscore LR. LR indicates logistic regression. You can choose any name. Pipeline underscore decision tree, DT, and the pipeline underscore random forest. 3 different pipelines has been selected, created. And what is there within the pipeline? You see that within the pipeline there is a list, and in that list there are 3 things there. One is that the standard scalar. Standard scalar is a technique by which you can standardize, by which it will convert 0 mean and 1 standard deviation. So here using standard scalar, data is feature scaled. And then PCA is used with n components. That means the principal components number 2. That means only PCA1, only PC1 and PC2 that has been used for the dimensional reduction. So this is used, and LR classifier that is used, which is the logistic regression with this hyperparameter with a random state 0, for no specification of the other hyperparameters there. So it will take the default. Similarly, for the decision tree, you can see that standard scalar and the PCA has been defined, but actually, in case of a decision tree, there is no requirement of doing the standard scalar. Not required actually. Okay. So after that, creating these 3 pipelines, you have understood. So it will work with the standard scalar, no problem, but actually not required. Unnecessary step. But again, to keep the things similar, it has been done. Next is that with the help of these pipelines, the model is the next step is observe. So after that, we have to do the score comparison of the different models. So here you can see what we have done actually. We have run a for loop for different pipelines. The pipelines are what? These are the different pipelines. So pipelines, we have created one list where each of the pipeline is there as a component within element in that list. Okay. So a for loop with this variable pipe is run, which that will take each of the component one by one from the pipelines, and pipe.fit will fit for each of the model with their hyperparameters mentioned and the pre-processing whatever is mentioned. Okay, so finally the score comparison of the different models that will be done. You see, for that, this is what is the score comparison. So score comparison, if you see, for that simple dictionary actually created, where 0 indicates logistic regression, 1 indicates decision tree, and 2 indicates random forest, and then a for loop actually run that will take the values from the pipelines one by one, and finally it will print this variable is this one, the first one, that is one by one the model values from the dictionary, pipe underscore dictionary, and this one is the score, model score of X test, Y test. So if you see, the print will be like this: logistic regression, then this writing, that is the test accuracy, and then this one is what? The model score. Okay, so in this way you can see that what are the scores for logistic regression, decision tree, and the random forest, and you can easily compare that which one is giving the best result, and you can select accordingly. So this is one of the application how pipelines are defined, and in an organized way different models within a few lines you can write basically. Okay, now pipeline and grid search CV, because it is also required to do some hyperparameter tuning, as well as if you use the pipeline so that the code will look better, so that also can be done in a text cell. You paste it, pipeline and grid search CV, and then using make underscore pipeline, this is, and here you see the pipe that is created that contains only one classifier, that is random forest classifier. No pre-processing is required, no standardization, no PCA, nothing, only the random forest classifier. So the objective here is to show that how along with the grid search CV this can be done, and then you see that grid parameters are defined. So where you see that random forest classifier, and after that you see the n estimators for these different values 10, 50, and 100. Then random forest classifier maximum depth, that will vary from this. These are the different values for which. So these are the different hyperparameter values for which the grid search CV is to work, and then finally it will fit the model. So you run, it will take some time, because you can understand that grid search CV will take a lot of time, because lot of hyperparameters is given. Around 2 minutes time it will require, I think. Okay, in my case also it's okay now. Now let's check the best params. Uh, now check the best parameters that it identified, and you can see that the max depth is 15, max leaf nodes 2, minimum sample leaf 5, and n estimator 10. This is the best combination that has been identified, and corresponding base score also you can get. Okay, so we have covered all these topics that we have planned today.